suit and adopted their own feminist foreign and international policies. But at the same time, we are also mindful of the fact that these overarching priorities need to be translated into concrete action to deliver real results. The Swedish feminist foreign policy is quite simple in that respect. It's based on asking questions concerning rights, representation, and resources for both women and men. Do they have the same rights to education, work, marriage, divorce, and inheritance? Are women represented where decisions are made? In parliaments, in business negotiations, on boards, and in legal systems? And is gender equality taken into consideration when resources are allocated in government budgets or in development projects? When we have answered these questions, we can start thinking of ways to affect and to bring about positive change. This change will undoubtedly take time and require many small steps on the way, but we firmly believe that it's possible. And in Sweden, we see that gender mainstreaming in all policy areas and gender-responsive budgeting are key. A gender equality perspective in the budget process ensures that reforms are implemented with a gender-sensitive approach. And this, in turn, requires improved gender equality impact analysis and systematic use of data and statistics that are disaggregated by gender. Essential to increasing gender equality is also the involvement of men and boys into this process, because gender equality is not only about women, it's about both men and women. And this is especially the case in countries where women and girls are underrepresented. We need to have men and boys with us in this process. Nigeria is an illustrative example, with only 5% of the members of parliament being women, and the situation is similar in many other countries. The push to increase women's participation and representation in decision-making positions in Nigeria and in Kwara State is commendable. We, as Sweden, we're proud to be a long-standing partner in the drive for increased gender equality and the empowerment of women in Nigeria and in the region through SIDA, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, and the Folke Bernadotte Academy, the Swedish government agency for peace, security, and development. Through funding and cooperation with strategic partners, civil society, and UN bodies, we support the promotion of women's rights and empowerment and the work to decrease sexual and gender-based violence. Earlier this week, on Monday, we celebrated the launch of the Nigerian branch of the She Decides movement. Sweden is proud to have been one of the initiators of the global She Decides movement, aiming to promote sexual and reproductive health and rights. We also contribute and support the ECOWAS activities in the women, peace, and security area, supporting gender mainstreaming and capacity building. But a gender perspective and inclusion of women is needed in all areas, including in the economic sector. Very important to have women and encourage women into the workforce. An example from the business sphere in the region that I would like to mention in this respect is the Swedish company Scania's initiative in Ghana to start a training academy for female bus drivers. This is, I believe, a concrete example of incorporating gender equality in bilateral trade and business. And this is something that we would like to promote in Nigeria as well. Sweden and the Embassy of Sweden here in Nigeria stand by the very important efforts to promote women's economic empowerment and participation in decision and policy-making bodies, the elimination of the prevalence of SGBV, and ensuring the full enjoyment of human rights for women and children. We wish to congratulate you on a very successful conference, on the progress made in Kwara State, and we encourage and support the continued strive for increased gender equality. We look very much forward to the outcomes of this conference and to further working together to achieve a more gender equal future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna Ras, for sharing, I guess, a more detailed example Sweden in terms of the strategies that have been put in place to put women and gender equality at the center of policy making, and also for talking about some of those initiatives that have been put in place by the Swedish Embassy as well on the regional level. Going back to international organizations and the roles that they have to play in the region with this issue of gender equality, we now have Ms. Comfort Lenti, of UN Women Representative to Nigeria, and the ECOWAS, who will speak to the strategies that the organization has put in place or is putting in place.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Your Excellency, the distinguished Governor of our state, Abdul Rahman Abdul Razak, Your Excellency President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, our mentor for women across the continent, Your Excellency, the Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament and the Honorable Minister of Women's Affairs, the Excellency First Lady of Kwara State and all the other First Ladies, and the distinguished panelists, good afternoon. To you all, please allow me to stand on already established protocols. As I say on behalf of UN Women, how delighted I am to represent us here. And on Nigeria's 60th anniversary, let me also add my voice to wishing this country a wonderful anniversary. I certainly believe that Nigeria's best days are ahead of her, and that the women of this great country will have a strong hand in shaping its future. Let me commend both His Excellency the Governor and First Lady of Kwara State for this pioneering conference, which is excellent, and I think that it's coming at a time when we've been through 25 years of progress in advancing women's rights agenda, and note that even though women are half of the world's population, we still only constitute 22% of leaders who are elected to office. Here in Nigeria, as speakers have said, of course, the figures are even lower, at 3.8% of women in the office being women. And so we all know that this is unacceptable for a country of Nigeria's stature and magnitude, and also in the face of, ample global evidence which confirms that when more women are in decision-making positions, we have more inclusive decisions, different voices are heard, different solutions are created. So I would really like to acknowledge and commend the efforts of Kwara State Government in working to promote gender equality through governance and appointing a gender parity cabinet. And Excellency, you are on the right side of history. To sustain this groundbreaking effort, we all know that getting women into political space is the first step. The other equally important step is also ensuring that they can perform and express their leadership in an environment that is conducive. And so there needs to be greater investment in fostering that enabling environment so that women can exercise their leadership effectively and without discrimination. And equally important is the need to also enshrine this practice in legislation that will ensure that this noble and laudable effort can be sustained. And I'd like to just highlight some areas of priority which I believe can deepen this important work that an example that Kwara State has set for the rest of the country. Certainly, as UN Women, we continue to lend support to advocacy efforts in Nigeria for passage of a gender and equal opportunities bill. Because we believe that when it's successfully passed at the federal level, it will put Nigeria alongside countries like Senegal, Uganda, South Africa, Rwanda, who have reserved quotas for women enshrined in their legislation. And in Nigeria, only a few states, Kitty being one of them, have adopted the gender and equal opportunity bill. So going forward, I believe that to seal this legacy that has been set in place through our government's gender Parity Cabinet would like to appeal to the state legislature to adopt the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill and institutionalize inclusive practices and policies, including gender-responsive budgeting and affirmative procurement across state institutions. And on affirmative procurement, which is the second important priority or strategy that I'd like to highlight, joint affirmative quota it's a key step in advancing women's economic empowerment by increasing women entrepreneurs' access to the procurement market. Currently, globally, only 1% of public procurement contracts go to women-owned businesses. And in Nigeria, women entrepreneurs in both informal and formal sector also face an array of structural barriers to accessing entrepreneurship opportunities and supply chains, including access to social and financial capital and business networks. And so I'd like to also call on Kwara State government to continue to use procurement to advance women's empowerment and to institutionalize more inclusive procurement policies that will increase the number of women-owned businesses who can successfully access public procurement contracts. I think today's conference also points to the valuable need to advocate for domestication in Kwara State of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act of 2015. Today, 16 states have successfully domesticated this act, and I know some steps have been taken in the right direction towards that, but full domestication, and this will ensure that prevention, prohibition, and redress of all forms of violence against women are addressed. A fourth priority area which I think is important to address in Kwara State is also the need to end the internal trafficking, forced labor, and sexual exploitation of girls in this state. I mean, this practice is often underpinned by high levels of poverty and lack of economic empowerment opportunities. As the Deputy Secretary General said, young women must be the benefactors of enterprise investment. So I would also like to urge Kwara State government to bolster efforts for targeted programs and services to reduce the risk of women and girls experiencing trafficking and labor exploitation, and then to strengthen the state infrastructure, including the State Ministry of Women's Affairs Anti-Trafficking Shelter. As previous speakers have said, the issue of investment in girls' education is key. We have seen in pandemic that there have been disruption to an estimated 80 million female learners in Nigeria alone have been infected. And we're witnessing increased cases of teenage pregnancy and early marriage as a result of the prolonged absences of girls from school in recent months. So investing in the next generation of leaders to build a gender equal world is really one of the key messages from UN Women's own global campaign on generation equality, which is part of how we're commemorating the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And as you may know, today we are officially commemorating that 25th anniversary of the UN General Assembly in New York as we speak. What today's convening also demonstrates is the importance of male allyship in partnership, which cannot be negated in working to achieve gender equality. And Excellency, your leadership as governor and commitment towards gender equality not only confirms you as the he for she champion, but also presents a model for other distinguished male leaders in Nigeria. We know that Kwara cannot be an island in itself, and so I wish to implore you, Your Excellency, to join forces with other progressive governments to the force for change, to change the narrative around gender equality and women's empowerment. We've already seen how the collective action of Governors Forum in recent months resulted in the National Declaration of a State of Emergency on Gender-Based Violence. So this is work that we believe you can continue to champion and bring on board others. For our last slide as UN Women, I would like to assure Your Excellencies of UN Women's commitment to supporting the government of Kwara State, the Office of the First Lady, in their mission towards achieving gender equality in the state. And this first annual conference sets the state on the right path to realization of the Sustainable Development Goals, and particularly Goal 5. I wish us all continued success to build a fruitful partnership towards gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Comfort Lamptey, UN Women Representative to Nigeria and ECOWAS, for describing the situation as you see it from the UN Women point of view, in Kwara State in particular, the advantages, the strides that have been made, but also the challenges that are still being faced by women and girls in the state, which kind of easily takes me into the last points that we will be addressing today. Local government strategies in a country like Nigeria, which is a federal state, the additional challenge to a level policing implementation system, which can sometimes come as a challenge when it comes to localizing gender policies and ensuring the trickle effect. And I hope that Her Excellency First Lady Hajia Mariam Tambuwal of Sokoto State can speak to this issue and tell us how she views the question of local government strategies in gender policy. I think you have to activate your microphone. There you go.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, special recognition to our first female president, Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the convener and the pioneer of this laudable initiative, His Excellency Governor Abdul Razak, and his able wife, Her Excellency His Host, Walake Abdul Razak, Honorable Minister of Employment and of existing protocol. First, I didn't get the question. Hanan, what was the question?
I was hoping you could speak to how to make sure that we can localize gender policies and ensure that there's a trickle-down effect from federal to a state level.
Okay. I am indeed delighted and honored to be invited to speak at this virtual meeting on Kwara State Government Gender Equality Conference, in galvanizing the will to take action on gender equality and women empowerment. Let me use this opportunity to congratulate the state government, the government and the people of Kwara State, his wife, for initiating this laudable and hopefully continuous conference on the choice of a theme that has remained on the front burner for global discourse for a very long time. And I also extend our goodwill from the government and good people of Sokoto State. The promotion of gender equality is now globally accepted as a development strategy for reducing poverty levels among women and men, improving health and living standards, and enhancing the efficiency of public investments. The attainment of gender equality, in my opinion, is not only seen as an end in itself but a human rights issue, but as a prerequisite for the achievement of sustainable development goals. Nigeria, as a member of the United Nations, signed and ratified the various relevant international instruments. Let me begin the discussion on this highly sensitive issue by laying my foundation from a World Bank report on gender inequality in Nigeria, which was published in 2005. Nigeria is a highly patriarchal society where men dominate all spheres of human lives. Women are in a subordinate position, particularly at the community and household levels. and male children are sometimes preferred over the female. The influence of the mother and the father is particularly significant in shaping and perpetuating patriarchy. The mother provides the role model for daughters, while the father demonstrates to sons what it means to be a man. 15 years at the situational report by the World Bank, as in other male-dominated societies, the social relations and activities of Nigerian women are still governed by these systems of male domination and cultural practices which favor the interests of men above those of the women. Despite a general commitment to the principle of non-discrimination as enshrined in Section 2 of the 1992 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Nigeria falls short of the desired result of giving males and females the 50-50 or the right balance. Treaties and conventions emphasize on the need for member nations to put in place all the necessary mechanisms needed to eliminate gender discriminations and ensure equality and human dignity to all men and women. However, despite the development of a national gender policy in the year 2007 and the commitment of governments at all levels to building a nation devoid of gender discrimination, yet there persists discrimination in non state statutes. Once again, congratulations to His Excellency the Governor of Kwara State for championing and pioneering this cause. In Nigeria, traditional customs, sexual stereotyping of social roles and cultural prejudice continue to militate against women and girls. I am glad that the Kwara State government, under the leadership of His Excellency and his wife, the Executive Governor Abdulrahman, taking measures to ensure women have their voices heard through 56% women representation in cabinet appointments and 50% women representation in high-level cadre of the state civil service. This is highly commendable as it surpasses the 30% affirmative action under women participation in governance. I hope to highlight that of my husband in due course. Let me use this opportunity to share the experiences of recognizing and investigating these issues. But before I go there, let me use the opportunity to share the experiences of the Sokoto State under the able leadership of my husband, Right Honorable Aminu Waziri Sokoto, as part of the efforts to ensure that women are adequately represented in decision making at all levels. My husband's women empowerment drive is unprecedented in the history of Sokoto State with the following appointments: 69 female councillors across the 23 local government areas, with each local government having 3 female councillors, 3 female commissioners, 4 female special advisors, 3 female permanent secretaries, 8 director generals, many female board members have been appointed, never before. While all these efforts are highly commendable, there's a need for all hands to be on deck to ensure women take their rightful positions in the scheme of things at all levels of the governance structure, locally and nationally. The pertinent question is, how do we build on the success that have so far been recorded? One of the speakers, the Honorable Minister, mentioned about her being in place with about 5 or 8 states out of the 36 states in the country. I suggest we develop and apply gender mainstreaming approaches, domesticated to suit our local environment. Tools and instruments that are compatible with macro policy framework. Adopt gender mainstreaming as a core value and practice in social transformation and organizational structures. Adopt and achieve minimum threshold of representation of women in order to promote equal opportunities in all areas of political, social, and economic life. Incorporated global and regional frameworks and enact laws to support gender equality and women empowerment. Educate sensitive issues, all relevant stakeholders, on gender equality and women empowerment as keys to the attainment of world development. I must emphasize here that political will remains a factor if we want to make progress in tackling these critical gender issues, and that's why I congratulate His Excellency Governor of Kwara State. political wills issue. These critical gender issues, as cross-cutting as they are, can be addressed through a well-coordinated approach that requires active participation of all stakeholders or some stakeholders of like minds from both government and non-governmental organizations. May I conclude by asking a few questions and a few suggestions? Reaffirming the position of African Union on gender equality, which was on the 6th of 8, which was on the 6th and 8th of July 2004. What have we achieved, and how has it benefited we as Nigerians? That's the Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality in Africa. We keep talking about the UN treaties and design agreements. We need to have a domesticated approach. Each to their own need, state, country, region. So the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa very recently emphasized on his one-year tenure that gender equality on the continental level will be on the basis of fairness, justice, and equality. Violence against persons and others to decide. We know the challenges. I'm really busy finding who's gender feminist, my amiable big sister. You know the challenges and why we're facing what is happening. Our overdependency on aid to determine our implementation of design agreements on foreign aid and mismanagement of funds is an issue. Lack of proper data and segregated mined data is an issue, in my opinion. We've been championing the cause of gender-based violence, sexually gender-based violence, domestic violence, but there are other issues. And I want to understand, what is the synergy between the AU, ECOWAS, the UN, EU, on designed programs like the Spotlight Initiative? But I understand the synergy and how we can tap into it, or how it can be domesticated to suit our intentions. I don't believe we need to be politically correct or apolitical when it concerns humanities. Whilst being on political and issue bordering on some national development, in our state actors as CEOs and partisan for effective checks and balances, we need to look at mismanagement of funds, lack of proper data, information dissemination, propagandas. I urge my sisters of like minds to push for issues of national concerns holistically and within the spheres of our influence. LGBT conversation is something that I think the Honorable Minister, we need to begin to have in the country, but within the context and conformity with our own values. We are burdened by the issue of rape, sexually based, and socially based violence, gender based violence. We need to look at the LGBT within the conformity of our own values, because we've been emphasizing on the gender violence for women, for girls, we're not emphasis on gender violence for boys, transgender, some even know their sexual orientation. We need to have a holistic view of who gender violence refers to and infers to, and not just champion because of some support we're going to get from the Western world, and concentrate only on the female gender. We all know that in Nigeria, we have a lot of transgenders. It's a human rights issue. So we have to look into that. I hope I'm not derailing from the conversation. Then there's World Bank conditionality, okay, bilateral notifications. I think basically our dependency on foreign aid And this aids coming and mismanaged, lack of proper data, we're being indexed with whatever is provided or assumed, largely not segregated, either regionally or nationally. Most of the data provided are fixtures, perhaps to get the aid we think we need. As a country, locally, I think the modalities we can adopt. We can begin to speak to children about molestation, the girl child, the boy child, domestic workers, in a child-friendly language, so they begin to understand these things. We need to begin to have conversations with our children on LGBT conversations, because these things happen in boarding schools. You don't deter parenting. It's no longer ours when you take your kids to boarding houses. This conversation, within the norms and our values, are things that we need to push further.
Excellent. Sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to make your conclusion.
So basically, this is it. I urge everybody, seasoned professionals, to look into some of the issues I've raised, and we locally, more than willing to work with like minds to domesticate an approach that we can provide solutions to issues confronting us. It was a privilege being on the panel. Once again, thank you very much, and I congratulate the government of Kwara State, and I hope this is the beginning of a good relationship between Sokoto State and Kwara State. Your Excellency, Mrs. Olufolake Abdrazak, Your Excellency, Erudubisi Fayemi, Your Excellency, Honorable Minister Dame Paul Ntalen, I hope with all like minds we can come together and push forth issues that concerns gender equality, root causes, and prefer solutions, and also implement them with your vast experience in these areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency First Lady Hajia Mariam Tamir of Sokoto State, for sharing your idea and pushing, the boundaries of this conversation a bit further. Thank you so much. Now we have Her Excellency First Lady BC Adeneyi Fayemi of Ekiti to also share her views on local government strategies.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Independence Day. Your Excellency, the convener of this summit, the Governor of Kwara State, Governor Abdurrahman Abdurazak, and his wife, my sister, Dr. Falake Razak, my big sister, my mentor and friend of many years, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. It's good to see you again, Ma. At this point, I'd like to, and the Honorable Minister for Women Affairs, I would like to stand on existing protocols at this point. I acknowledge everyone who has spoken and acknowledge all my sisters, my colleagues who are on this call as well. It gives me great pleasure to be here this afternoon to be part of this conversation on the critical importance of bringing down issues around gender equality and women's empowerment to sub-national level, to the state level. The year 2020 is a very unique one for me because it happens to be the 25th anniversary of the famous Beijing conference. I attended the Beijing conference as a young woman, full of hopes, full of dreams for the future. And it was very easy in 1995 to envision a world, a future in which men would be full and equal citizens under democratic governments, where women would hold 50% of positions, where women would live free from fear and violence, a world in which the bodies and the rights of women and girls would be sacrosanct. That was 25 years ago. And so you can imagine how someone like me and many other women like myself who were at Beijing years ago, how we feel having the same conversations 25 years after. And sometimes it feels like a case of taking 5 steps forward and 10 back. Having said that, I'm an eternal optimist. I choose to look at the gains that we've made over the years as African women and as Nigerian women. And because I've been in a position to occupy different platforms over the years in the international arena, working in the African Women's Movement, where I worked with President Seli for some time. I'm back to my home state in Ekiti, where I'm supporting my husband in the work that he does. I would like to believe that there's hope. And I'd like to share some of the things that we've done in Ekiti with you, or some of the lessons that we've learned. And to see if these are things that we can all work together on as we deepen these conversations at subnational level and across our borders. What we have learned in Ekiti State is that for us to really be serious about gender equality and women's empowerment, we have to have at least 5 things in place. There are others we need to have in place, but at least 5 things. First of all, there has to be strong political will. And the fact, and this example is demonstrated in what His Excellency the Governor of Kwara has been doing in terms of providing an equal voice for women in Kwara State, where we have 56% of women in governance. Political will is expressed through things like that, through the actions of the chief executive, through the directives that he gives, through body language, and through the ways in which he deploys resources, whether they are human, material, technical, or financial resources. It is also expressed through the kinds of institutions and the commitments that are made to the kind of institutions required to drive these agendas through, and the capacities that are built to ensure that this happens. So that's lesson learned. Political will is something that we cannot afford to take for granted. The second issue is around legal frameworks, legal and policy frameworks, and a lot has been said about this all afternoon. Ekiti State happens to have about the most robust frameworks in Nigeria when it comes to gender equality and women's empowerment. It's important to have all these frameworks in place because if you are trying to solve one problem, you cannot afford to create another. We have a national gender policy in Nigeria, for example, and the understanding in 2005 when the national gender policy was developed was that all states in the federation would domesticate that national gender policy so that everyone would have a roadmap to address these issues. The first state to domesticate the national gender policy was Ekiti State in 2011. Since then, I believe just 2 or 3 other states have domesticated the national gender policy. Now, these kinds of policies are important because they enable us have a framework through which we can address issues to do with women's inclusion in political participation, women's economic empowerment, and again, how resources are allocated. In Ekiti State, we also have the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill, which was passed in 2013. My sister Comfort Lante was talking about the efforts we have been making to get this passed at the national level. We are still at it, and we still hope that it will be passed within the next 12 months by the National Assembly. But in the interim, we can still do this at state level. We passed the GO bill in Ekiti State in 2013. We also have a range of laws to protect women, girls, and men as well from all forms of gender-based violence. I'll come to those in a moment. But these legal and policy frameworks are extremely important because we cannot leave women's empowerment and gender equality to the whims and caprices of the government of the day or to the goodwill of the governor. It's great to have a governor who has goodwill, but we need certain things codified in laws and policies. The third thing that needs to be in place when we are talking about gender equality and women's empowerment is the inclusion of women's issues or gender issues in key priorities of the administration, so that in everything the administration does, in planning, in budgeting, in implementation, the interests of women and girls and children are taken on board. And in Ekiti State, everyone knows that this is an absolute priority for the government. So it applies to health issues, to the issues of education, to issues of agriculture, and so on. The fourth issue is support for state machinery for gender. One of the achievements that has been made over the years through the UN system is the existence of these national machineries and also state machineries. Sadly, in many parts of Africa, and Nigeria is no exception, the national machineries for gender are usually the weakest of all the governance machineries. They receive the least funding, they receive the least support, and they have the least political clout. And so, as we continue to advocate for the Federal Ministry of Women's Affairs to be supported with the required resources to ensure that gender equality and women's empowerment is invested at state level as well, we need significant investments in the state machineries for gender. In Ekiti State, it's known as the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development. And during the 2 times my husband has been governor, the budget of the Ministry of Women's Affairs has tripled. So it enables the ministry to do a whole lot more and invest in what needs to be done. And talking about machinery to support women's issues, the office of the First Lady, people might want to have all kinds of arguments about the legality of it or otherwise. You cannot have an effective governance system or sub-national operations in Nigeria without involving the wife of the governor, because the key roles that we play. And last but not least in that regard is the issue of partnerships. We cannot promote gender equality and women's empowerment without partnerships with civil society and development partners to support the work that we are doing and ensure that it's taken to scale. I would like to end on what we have been doing in Ekiti State to promote a response around gender-based violence. It's one of the things I was asked to talk about by the organizers. Gender-based violence has been very high on the agenda for countries around the world in this year 2020 because of the impact of COVID. And even though many people now understand that COVID exacerbated incidences of gender-based violence, those of us who have been working on these issues for many years, we would like to insist that when COVID goes away, GBV might not go away, because GBV has always been there. What we want to seize this moment to do is to draw more attention to the need for us to do work around gender-based violence issues at all levels. And that is one of the reasons why some of us governors got together and established Nigerian Governors Wise Against Gender-Based Violence in June. And the first thing we did as a group was to write a memo to the Nigerian Governors Forum demanding that they pass a state of emergency on gender-based violence. And we are very happy that our husbands obliged and went ahead and did so. And the chair of that group and our secretary is Her Excellency Dr. Folake Abdulrazak. There are 21 of us in that group, some of them are on this call. And there's one who is also supposed to be on this call as well, Her Excellency the First Lady of Sokoto State, Madam Maria Tambuwa. She's a member of our group as well. And we all have action plans that we have developed to work on in our respective states to drive an active GBV response. In Ekiti State, we have learned that it is not enough to have a GBV law. We have one in place in Ekiti. We domesticated the VAP Act in 2019 and used it to enrich the law that we have passed in 2011. So we have a more robust law at the moment. We also have a law on treatment, care, and protection of sexually abused minors, because we're very alarmed at the rate at which minors are being abused in the state, and provisions that we need to be able to protect them that we don't in the VAP Act. And we also need additional laws such as laws against genital mutilation and widowhood practices, all of which we have. So the full menu of these laws and policies enables us to provide a comprehensive support system for survivors of gender-based violence. We are also very keen to support the protection of GBV survivors. So we have a shelter, We have a sexual assault referral center, and we also have a survivors fund, the first of its kind in the country. So my recommendations are to our other states, or to Kwara State, who are in the process of passing their own GBV law at the moment. Going forward, the issue of political will, we cannot afford to let that slip. Once you set your hand to it, it has to go on because there's a whole lot to be addressed. So we need to keep putting pressure on His Excellency, if you don't mind, sir, and all the other levers of government who need to drive this. And also, I'm sure the donor partners who are listening will appreciate the need for all these issues to be resourced adequately. It is also important for us to ensure that we have an effective state coordinating mechanism for any laws we have in place. So if we have a gender and equal opportunities bill in place, or a GBV law, there has to be an effective state mechanism to ensure that key actors are working together in synergy. The office of the Ministry of Justice, the Chief Judge, the police, education, health, and so on, as well as an engaged civil society for maximum results. It's important to have monitoring and evaluation systems in place. Partnerships with civil society organizations are important. Peer learning from other states or other parts of the world and documentation of best practices are key. And finally, it is important to build in sustainability strategies. It is, not enough for us to think that we are doing the best we can, and everybody appreciates the hard work that goes into it. The next administration might decide to do something different, and we have that experience in Ekiti State during the 4 years that my husband was out of office before he went back for his second term. So we need to build these sustainability strategies and frameworks to ensure that this work continues regardless of who is in office. And that is why legal and policy frameworks are absolutely key, and capacity building and resource investment all round. Thank you once again for inviting me to speak. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to working with you a lot more on these issues.
Thank you, Her Excellency, First Lady of Ekiti State, for ending your address on the issue of gender-based violence, namely, which, as we've seen recently, has soared and also has been met with widespread protests against gender-based violence in countries such as Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone, to name a few. Thank you very much. I also want to thank our esteemed panelists for this insightful discussions today, for sharing your experiential knowledge as part of this first Kwara annual conference on gender equality. And I'm sure the conversation is always beginning. This is not the end, and there will be much more coming out from this event. I will now give the floor to Her Excellency Mrs. Olufulake Abdulrazak for a vote of thanks, and I will let her express her thanks to you all.
Thank you very much for that, moderator. You've done a fantastic job this afternoon. And, I'd like to thank everyone involved. I'm sure you can see how important this conference has been. We may not have known of the need or the necessity to put this together before now, but I'm sure that after engaging in today, we can all see why it was necessary to come together to do this. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by thanking the Executive Governor of Kwara State and my dear husband for bringing together from across the continent a constellation of leaders to lend their voices and give a big push for women to be granted equal and full voice, participation, and for making the case that we need the essential role of women, their ingenuity, vision, and achievement to realize humanity's vital projects and sustainable development. I'm sure this has been witnessed here today. Our state government, I thank you so much for your active engagement in today's event. By choosing to share with us your experience and expertise, you have chosen to open your mind to the infinite possibilities of an equal world, which we are all working towards. I trust that you will continue the conversation within and among your communities in order to amplify the voice of every girl. Listen to the words of every woman, facilitate the inclusion of the most vulnerable and marginalized women, and support women participation in political processes. As was said by Her Excellency Johnson, it is equality that is paramount. The gender is not, one gender is not to overshadow the other. We are looking for equality. Today from our leaders, we have heard a glowing consensus across critical areas for gender equality and women empowerment. From their submissions, we can see common threads of concern in allotting space of pride to women. Thank you to Your Excellency Helen Johnson-Sirleaf for sharing with us insights on how the executive arm of government can take the lead in ensuring increased women participation in government and the economy. I think it was particularly important for you to be here today, for other young women aspiring to positions to see what is attainable and what is achievable by women in what you have done. I equally commend our amiable Honorable Minister, Ministry of Women's Affairs, Dame Pauline Talon, for doing justice to the same subject. She has been tireless in moving around the country, in working together with governors, first ladies, commissioners, and she does very well to move between both the president and the first lady of Nigeria in all that she does. She's our big sister, and we continue to look towards more cooperation from her. Your Excellency, Honorable Speaker Tune Sidio of ECOWAS, thank you for shedding more light on the role of ECOWAS in the quest to increase female participation and social protection. I would like to just share a little bit about my background in diplomacy and the current Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and what we're trying to do in making sure we mobilize women across borders to be able to work in entrepreneurship and getting things done, to move forward the continent. So I was very happy to hear your contributions. To Mr. Sugar Chowdhury, World Bank Country Director, Nigeria, and Mr. Kimwan Ntara, World Bank Country Director, Liberia, we say thank you for laying bare the international financial institutional strategies to reduce gender inequality through loan and loan programs and the potential for gender-centered conditionality in these programs. We look forward to talking to you more after this program to make sure that we can access all these facilities. Ms. Anna Ross, Deputy Head of Missions, Swedish Embassy, Nigeria, we appreciate your insight into the Swedish experience, and it is very heartwarming who had done so well in mitigating the effects of the COVID-19. Sweden is among those countries, and we know that also it's because of the gender parity that you have in the country. Ms. Comfort Lanty, UN Women Representative to Nigeria and ECOWAS, thank you for sharing with us United Nations women's strategies to reduce gender inequality through increased women participation in politics and economic activities. I remember we had spoken prior to this on your coming to Kwara, and I'm happy now that this will galvanize all our talks and make sure that we do more. We thank Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, the DSG United Nations, and for her message. It is indeed heartwarming anytime we see her messages, which she does quite a lot of. We consider her a big sister in Kwara, and I was with her sister just this morning. We took a couple photos together, and I did tell her that she will be participating in this webinar. We thank you so much for your warm words. Zora Yusufu, for your beautiful goodwill messages as well. Amid New Excellencies, distinguished participants, this vote of thanks will not be full enough without making recourse to the laudable efforts of sister first ladies of states in Nigeria under the aegis of the Nigerian Governor's Wives Against Gender-Based Violence, of which Her Excellency Belu Isi Fayemi is the chairperson and of which I am the secretary. There have been laudable efforts in advocating for the welfare and due representation of women in their respective states. Their humble efforts is seen, appreciated, and is stroking concerns and filing forward for gender parity in Nigeria. And we also commend Her Excellency Dr. Aisha Buhari for all her support in this regard. She has given us a lot of support in this organization, as well as the president, and we want to commend her for that. Fayemi has spoken a lot on what we've been trying to achieve, and I believe a lot of that was understandable, and we are here to explain more to everybody who may need to listen to anything else. The Nigerian Governor's Wives Against Gender-Based Violence is also working tirelessly to ensure that laws are passed and working in gender-based violence communities to ensure the welfare of women and girls and the few boys and men that with the support of His Excellency the Executive Governor of Kwara State has enabled the creation of a sexual assault referral center in Nogwe in Kwara State Central Senatorial District, with the intent of establishing 2 more in the other senatorial districts of the state. Owing to the support of the governor also, we have a fully functional shelter which has been the drivers of gender-based violence. This and other issues has His Excellency addressed and is what is obtainable in Kwara in this regard. So it's not just appointing women in office and making sure women are in various offices. His Excellency has also really assisted us in the gender-based violence war. Kwara State is indeed a model state on gender equality, as the government has many veritable women working to ensure the progress of the state. We believe we might and should be considered for an entry in the Guinness Book of Records. In closing, while we are meeting virtually, partly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it is hoped that we would meet at further such events and be able to further rub minds on all these contending issues. I profoundly thank you and to everyone who have been a part of making today a reality, from the speakers, the panelists, through to the audience, those behind the scenes. Your insights, contributions, and participation is fully appreciated. We're proud of all of us for putting this together. I thank you all.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, I think we can give First Lady of Kwara State a round of applause. Thank you all, attendees, speakers, obviously His Excellency the Governor of Kwara State for organizing this event, and the press and attendees and participants for being part of the experience. Thank you all.
Well, 24 minutes to 5 on Women Radio WFM 91.7. Yes, you've been listening to the first annual Kwara Gender Equality Conference with the theme Galvanizing the Will to take actions on gender equality and women empowerment. A lot has been said on that conference, and you can of course rely on Women Radio to give you more updates in regards to that. But we also heard from Erelu Bisi, that's the First Lady to the Governor of Ekiti State, who stated that there is a need for a political will, legal and political framework as well, being key factors to guaranteeing gender parity in all sectors of the economy. Then, coming from, Dr. Mrs. Olufolake Abdulrazak, the wife of the Governor of Kwara State, she appreciated all the speakers and their contribution, with regards to the topic today. And she also says, she reiterated Ellen Johnson Salif's comments on the fact that equality is paramount and not dominant. And she also appreciated everyone with regards to that. But not to forget, we will definitely ensure that updates with regards to the webinar, on galvanizing the theme, not to forget galvanizing the will to take actions on gender equality and women empowerment as well broadcast. It's Women Radio here at WFM 91.7. Once again, happy Independence Day, Nigeria.